everyone. It's been a little while since I've checked in, and so I wanted to just take a few minutes to give just a brief update on where I'm at in my journey, and then wanted to move on to something that's really important to me and I think can be very educational, very informative to others. And so, first of all, just to touch base a little bit, I have been through 16 rounds of chemo. My first 4 rounds were every 2 weeks, and it was a type of chemo known as AC, sometimes referred to as the Red Devil. And the next 12 rounds were weekly rounds of a type of chemo known as Taxol. And I did really well. I made it through all 16 rounds, which I was really happy about. I was cautioned that many times people don't make it all the way through that many rounds of chemo because your blood count can drop too low. And the only concerns they ever had was at one point it appeared that I was becoming quite anemic, and they had cautioned that if I were to become any more anemic, that they would have to do a blood transfusion before I could have any more chemo. But then very rapidly everything started coming back up. And I had 1 week that I did have to skip a week of chemo due to an infection. But we were able to get right back on track, and I did make it through all 16 rounds and did really well. My doctors were really pleased with how my body responded and how well I did through all of that. So was really glad to get through that and ring the bell. I also have been through 4 surgeries. The 4th one was a unilateral mastectomy. I did make the choice not to have reconstructive surgery. And that's such a personal choice, and so I certainly respect, others' wishes who have chosen differently. I did spend a couple hours talking to a plastic surgeon, asking a lot of questions and really listening to what she had to say. And after that, I did opt not to do the reconstruction, and feel like I made a really informed decision that was right for me. And so I have been about a month out from my mastectomy and am doing quite well. I'm back to being able to continue my normal activities, feeling pretty well, a little bit tired, but I think that's to be expected. I will begin radiation on the 26th of this month. I'll have 28 days of radiation, so I'll go 5 days a week for 5 weeks and 3 days. And so I'm looking forward to getting started just because I'm looking forward to being done. And so I've done really well, and just want to make sure that everybody knows that there's hope. There's hope. When you hear the word cancer, it can be absolutely terrifying. And I just need to make sure that people know that it's not an easy road, but there is hope. And anyone going through this, just know that my thoughts, my prayers, and all of my love is with you. And I'm here for you if you ever need to reach out. I'm here. Now, I want to move on and talk to you tonight about health insurance and navigating your medical expenses. The last thing you want to have to worry about going through something like this is how you're going to pay for it. And so I wanted to give a little bit of information that I hope will help others when you're making decisions. Maybe you're looking at your health insurance options, I wanted to just go through some things that I know that may be beneficial to you. I'm going to give you an example of some of the things you can see when you're looking at your health insurance. A lot of times you'll hear about having to pay your deductible or having a split, or having to pay an annual out-of-pocket expense. So I'm going to give you an example so that it can help you to understand this maybe a little bit more clearly. The example I'm going to give you is an example of someone who got their health insurance, and their health insurance has a $1,000 deductible, an 85-15 split after that, and an annual out-of-pocket expense of $4,000. So what that would mean is, in the event that you went through something like I'm going through, and you had to use your health insurance, you would have to pay the first $1,000 out of your pocket. That's your deductible. Once that $1,000 is paid, then in this example, there's an 85-15 split. So your health insurance would pay 85%, you would pay 15%. And then once you've hit your out-of-pocket maximum, which in this example is $4,000, then your expenses are paid at 100%. So again, to go through this example, you're going through something like I am. You pay the first $1,000 at the full amount out of your pocket. And then your insurance company picks up 85%. You pay 15% of your bills at that time, up to your out-of-pocket maximum expense, which in this example is $4,000. So you come out of pocket with $4,000, and then your insurance pays at 100%. Now, it's important to understand that you may have different options to choose from. So you could maybe choose a lower deductible or a higher deductible, a lower annual out-of-pocket expense or a higher annual out-of-pocket expense. Typically, the lower your deductible and the lower your out-of-pocket expense, the higher your premium. The higher your deductible, the higher your out-of-pocket expense, the lower your premium. So you have to weigh, is it easier for me to come up with more each month to pay my insurance and have a lower deductible and lower out-of-pocket expense? Or is it feasible for me to pay less monthly, knowing that I'm going to have a higher deductible, higher out-of-pocket expense? Those are just some things to keep in mind as you're navigating your health insurance and making those decisions. And it's going to be very different for everybody. So just keep that in mind and really look at the options, weigh those options when you're making that decision. Another thing that I really encourage is to look into supplemental insurance. When we think of supplemental insurance, one of the first things a lot of people think of is Aflac. And that's exactly the type of policy that I'm talking about. Now, there's many options, many different companies that sell these types of policies. And you could be looking at accident policies, critical illness policies, policies specific to cancer. And I really want to differentiate between your supplemental insurances and your health insurance. Your health insurance, when you have an expense, your health insurance goes directly to the doctor or the hospital to pay for those expenses. Supplemental insurance comes to you. So let's just say, for example, you purchase a supplemental insurance policy that will pay you $10,000 in the event that you are diagnosed with cancer. At the time you get that diagnosis, you file a claim, and within a certain period of time, depending on the policy, you will be given a lump sum. So in this case, we're talking about $10,000. So the person in this example purchases this policy and later is diagnosed with cancer. They file a claim, and from that claim, they get $10,000 given directly to them to use as they see fit. So let's go back to our example on our health insurance where the person had to come out of pocket with $4,000. But if they had purchased that supplemental policy and they got $10,000 to them, they can use a portion of that to pay for their deductible and their annual out-of-pocket expense. They could use that money to pay their rent, pay their utilities, pay travel expenses, anything that that person needed to get by as they're going through this. They can use that money as they see fit. Imagine what a blessing that could be to not have to figure out how you're going to pay for these unexpected expenses because you purchased that supplemental insurance. It can be such a blessing to have that. None of us want to ever have to use a policy like that. But it's so much better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So really consider this option, whether it's something that your employer offers or whether it's something that you have to get through public insurance. Get it. It can be so incredibly helpful. Just something to think about. And I know a lot of times we think, I'm healthy, I'm still young, I don't need any of that. But you truly never know. And there's so many options, so please consider that, and please reach out if you have any more questions, anything else I can answer about this, I'd be glad to. Another thing I really wanted to talk about was your medical bills. As those start coming in, it's hard enough going through something like this. And then as the bills start coming in, it just becomes so frightening to have to think about. And one thing a lot of people don't know is that you can always talk to your doctor, your provider, your hospital, whoever you may need to talk to about the medical expenses. And you can sometimes negotiate those medical bills. Just because you get a bill, let's say for example you get a $3,000 medical bill and you're not sure how you're going to come up with that money, please talk to the billing department. Ask them what options you may have. You can look into setting up a payment arrangement. You can maybe even look into negotiating those medical bills. It's a lot easier sometimes for them to work with you and negotiate the medical bill than to risk the chance that it doesn't get paid. For example, sometimes you can have conversations like this one. I understand that I owe you $3,000. I don't have $3,000, but if we can negotiate this down to something that is more affordable for me, I can pay that today in full. So what options do you have that might help me out? And their response might be, we can take 10% off of that bill. That's great. 10% off of that $3,000 medical bill. There's $300 they just took off of that. But don't ever be afraid to ask if that's the best they can do. Don't ever be afraid to say, is there any way we can get that any lower? They might say no, but they might not. It doesn't hurt to ask. I have been able to negotiate some of my medical expenses to make it much easier for me to pay, simply by saying, if we can get this to an amount that is more affordable for me, I can pay you in full today. They love hearing that. They'd rather have you pay that lower amount in full today than have it sit and potentially not get paid. And so it's always, always good to ask. You don't know, and I know sometimes people are hesitant to ask the questions. It's difficult for a lot of us to be able to ask for help, but it's so worth it. And I don't know if people really know that you can have those conversations, that you can ask to set up a payment arrangement, that you can ask if there's any way to lower those bills. Also, don't hesitate to find out if there's any type of copay assistance. When I was going through chemo, I was on an automatic injector called Neulasta, and the Neulasta was very, very expensive. But I was able to find out that there was a copay assistance available, and I got a bill at one point that was $2,700, but a good portion of that was the Neulasta that I was on. After they sent the bill to the company, to Neulasta, Neulasta actually paid a significant portion of that for me. And that bill ended up, my portion of it ended up being $400. Ask the questions. Ask, is there copay assistance for anything? Is there any way I can negotiate this bill? Can I set up a payment arrangement? Ask the questions you don't know if you don't ask. So I encourage everybody to think about what I've told you tonight and to reach out if you have any questions or anything I can clarify on this. Please let me know. And know that my thoughts, my prayers, and my love are with you always. Peace and love to everyone. Good night.